Chapter 39. Selez. Selez, what happened? Your arm. Aquamarine pools met his gaze with soft recognition. It took only a moment for them to penetrate his stoic facade, and they briefly twitched wide with surprise. The uncharacteristic momentary shift in expression might have been missed by an observer. Selez felt it like a physical blow. This was his mother. This was the first. What have you done? She knew. Amongst the Naga, the priestesses of Azrea safeguarded the spiritual well being of their people. Azrea, mother of the waters, was often calm and gentle as the still surface of a reflecting pool. But she could also rage and crash like the great tidal storms that swept across the oceans with the change of the tides. A few Naga were born each cycle able to resonate with Azrea's song. The feelings of euphoria that accompanied this resonation was addictive, causing them to steadily draw more. Often, as they aged, this manifested in extreme swings of emotion and uncontrolled outbursts of power. The young minds were like hollow bells, passively amplifying even the smallest vibrations. But the song of a god was infinite, and Azrea was not a god of restraint. If it had consumed her lover, Ra'ino, what mortal could withstand it? And so the energy needed to be dampened and controlled, else it would burn them out. Any latent emotion within their minds would echo and amplify. Thus, they trained to reduce and eliminate them. Priestesses forged themselves into placid mirrors to direct her will and energy, protecting themselves. The stronger the power they channeled, the more tranquil they needed to be, as though their minds were glass tuning forks that resonated with Azrea's touch. The wrong shape or insufficient dampening, and the glass shattered. The first of Azrea was responsible for leading the most sacred and intense communal ceremonies. Like the wedged bow of a ship cutting through oncoming waves, they were the focal point that shielded the others. The slightest imperfection when making contact would reverberate the force, tearing them apart. Thus, the more high-ranking a priestess was, the flatter their affect and the tighter their control. To become the first required a machine-like apathy, a death of emotion. When his mother's face, that had remained placid through decades of channeling a god, twitched, Selez felt it like a scream. I, Selez couldn't speak the words. Her voice was quiet, flat, and even. You should not be here. Whatever has happened, a Grant should be with his family in his home shrine. But you are here, and I see the marks of shame you now bear. You have until the preservation rites are complete and the mourners join us to explain. She looked down pointedly at Bagrant's wound and then back to Selez's eyes. Why are you not writing a Coriacea to your calling? Why is Bagrant dead? How have you come to be sullied? Speak truthfully. Her eyes closed and she placed her palms together in a praying position. A low hum started to emit from her and her hands started to glow. Faint tendril of light started to extend from the edge of the glow towards Bagrant. Selez took a breath. A human ship crashed near the Forbidden Island while we were passing by on our way to the edge. We witnessed the exile save one of them from drowning. We followed and saw a human wielding a tide sword. He paused and glanced down at Bergrant. I led Bergrant and Talinth to punish the exile and retrieve the tide sword. The wizard who lives there stopped us and removed my arm. Selez stopped to itch the charred skin where the arm should have been. We then reported to Tide Lord Absaloth, who left us at the lightless reef while he confronted the wizard. The tendril of light stretching from the first hands reached Bergrant's neck wound, and seemed to infuse it with a soft glow. The stains and scabs of the blood faded and the wound started to close. When Tide Lord Absaloth returned, he stated that he would not punish them. He said he had made a covenant with the wizard to grant the human safe passage and allow the exile to leave the island under a blood oath. He then stated that Bergrant, Talinth, and I were banned from performing the song this year for trespassing on the island, that we were to return to Nagara and inform you of these events. Selez thought he did a good job of presenting the information truthfully while presenting his decisions as rational choices. Bergrant's wound was now only a thin line of split skin that melded together into a seamless stretch of flesh where the wound had been. The glow then expanded outwardly. Where it made contact with the skin and scales, they seemed brighter and more vibrant. Tide Lord Absaloth. Tide Lord Absaloth was right to punish you. You were warned, as are all Naga who travel to the edge. The Forbidden Island is off limits. You should have reported these events to the Deep Watch before taking any action. Did I teach you so poorly? Selez felt the shame of it, but also anger. Our laws were being broken. A tide sword was being wielded by our enemy. A sentence of exile had been violated. Does this not justify trespass? The glow had now extended over Bergrant's entire body, and the full color he had when alive restored. Perhaps, but that was not your decision to make. Besides, deferring to the Deep Watch as would be protocol, a true leader would recognize their ignorance and seek knowledge. Namira opened her eyes. They glowed softly with the same aquamarine color now surrounding Bergrant. The actions you describe would not have marked you so. And Bergrant was alive when you left the lightless reef. Continue. Namira closed her eyes once more and the humming continued. A leather pouch on the first waist opened without being touched, and a fine sparkling particulate started to snake out of it through the water to join the tendril of light extending from Namira's hands to Bergrant. Bergrant, Talinth, and I thought to check a local tide womb on our way back and found the humans had tainted the sacred waters, violating their covenant with the Tide Lord. We used a horn to call nearby Naga to us and attacked them. Bergrant was killed by their captain, who wielded the tide sword. The human then imbued the tide sword, silencing and shaming all present. At this, Namira's eyes opened wide and her humming stopped. The light from the ritual dulled. Human, Imbued a tide armament? Namira's raised voice startled Selez. Never in his life had he heard it so. The tide armaments were artifacts Nagin had given the Naga. They were physical manifestations of honor, seen more as sacred relics than weapons. Only the most venerated were allowed to wield them, and they could only be imbued by channeling the will of Azrea or Ra-Ino. At least, this is what all Naga were taught. Words from the wielder of an actively imbued tide sword were treated as though coming from the gods themselves. That a human, the defilers of the oceans, the slayers of Coriacea, the minions of the abyss, could wield that power was unthinkable. The implications of this would spread throughout the Naga reefs. For if a human did actually imbue a tide sword, it meant one of two things were true. Either the teachings of the relics were false, calling into question Azraean religious doctrine, or the teachings around humans as a uniformly evil race that should be purged were false. Yes, Selez's brow skin furrowed. It was profane. It was sacrilege. And then the second blade of the Deep Watch appeared and let the humans go. He commanded me to bring Bragant back. When I awoke, the gods had marked me sullied. The gods do not make mistakes. And yet I do not hear any dishonesty in your voice. I know not why they would have marked you so. Selez, I will need to inform the council, and you will need to be brought before them to be judged. Regardless of the circumstances, sullied cannot remain within Nagara, and no priestess is allowed to touch you with Azraea's voice. I am sorry. But Grant clenched his one remaining fist. He had hoped that when he returned to Nagara, they would be able to perform a ritual of restoration for his arm. When this ritual is complete, turn yourself into the guard and await summons from the council. Namira closed her eyes again and started to hum. The particulate shimmering dust that had come from the pouch expanded through the water across Bragant's body, settling to float above it in a rough outline. The humming intensified in pitch, and the glow around Bragant grew brighter until Bragant was obscured. A single chime sounded, and the light faded. Bragant's body was now preserved in a hardened glass-like shell. This would allow the period of mourning to commence, facilitating his viewing by all those who wish to remember. Selez had found himself staring at Bragant's face. He looked so alive, like he would open his eyes and look at him, speaking words of chastisement at any moment. He was surprised when he felt the hand touch his shoulder. His mother had moved around Bragant to stand next to him. Her eyes carried a hint of sadness as she looked at him. Her hand started to glow and he felt warmth enter the wound. The burning and itching faded away. Selez knew that she risked much by doing so, and perhaps had even marked herself as dishonored in the act. Selez, this is all I can do. When next we meet, I will represent the will of our people. She leaned forward and embraced him. Remember, even Ra-Ino forgave Azrea. If you seek redemption, you will find it. As Selez exited the shrine, a throng of people waited outside. There was already a murmur in the crowd, and his appearance only heightened it. He caught some of the words as he pressed through them. It was Selez Lumen Scale. I heard the first herself is performing the rites. Why would he bring him here? I heard it was a human attack. Then a blue-scaled Naga stepped in front of him. He was flanked by a few others of similar coloration. Selez looked up from the ground. You the one that brought my son back? The Naga's eyes narrowed. Why would you bring him here? Why did you not call from the gates? What happened? He demanded, not pausing to give Selez time to answer each question. I am sorry, said Selez. The Grant was my friend. I will hunt down the human that killed him. I swear it by my blood. So it was a human attack. The shrine behind pulsed a chime that reverberated through the water. A female Naga put their hand on the father's shoulder. Calgrick, let's go see our son, she said. He grunted and moved past Selez roughly with the flow of the crowd moving into the shrine. Selez slowly started to move against the tide of people and then down the grand rise. The streets were largely empty now as he made his way to the interior guard station. It was among the few non-coral buildings and was said to be one of the original structures formed by Negan. It was made from basalt left over from ancient lava that once flowed from the caldera. Rather than rise above the street, there was only one level above. It sunk multiple levels downward. There was actually a separate entrance that extended outside the caldera, though Selez had never seen it. That was how those not privy to the interior accessed the building, as many who worked there were not of the proper blood. As he entered and slithered up to the counter manned by a uniformed member of the Nagaran Guard, he felt detached. His mind refused to be present in the moment, recoiled from it, like he was watching someone else control his body, while he internally shouted, "No, stop." It didn't feel like it was him that opened his mouth and uttered the words that would destroy his future and forever alter the course of his life. My name is Selez Lumenscale. I am sullied. I submit myself for judgment.